The banker's daughter stood at the edge of the dance floor in Springerville, Arizona, watching couples swirl past in a blur of calico and cotton while she pressed herself against the wall, wishing she could disappear into the rough-hewn planks behind her. Jensen had learned long ago that parties were not meant for girls like her. At 20 years old, she carried weight that drew stares and whispers, curves that made the other young women in town exchange knowing glances, and the men look away quickly, as if even acknowledging her presence might somehow taint them. Her father, George Jensen, owned the Springerville Bank and Trust, which meant she could not simply fade into obscurity. She was expected to attend every social gathering, every church supper, every barn dance, standing on display like an unwanted piece of furniture that was too expensive to discard but too unsightly to use. The fiddle music scratched through the warm August evening of 1882, and June felt sweat trickling down her back beneath her carefully pressed blue dress. Her mother had helped her into the garment that afternoon, both of them pretending not to notice how the fabric strained across her middle, how the seams pulled tight at her shoulders and hips. Clara Jensen had kissed her daughter's cheek and told her she looked lovely, but June had seen the worry in her mother's eyes, the unspoken concern that another evening would pass without a single man asking her to dance. "Did you see Martha Whitley's new dress?" a voice tittered nearby. "Her waist is so tiny, Tom Parker could probably span it with his hands." "Some of us are blessed with self-control," another voice replied, and June did not need to turn her head to know they were talking about her. They always were. She considered slipping out the back door of the community hall, making her way home through the darkened streets, but her father would be disappointed. George Jensen held out hope that his daughter might still make a good match, that some man in Springerville or one of the surrounding ranches might look past her size and see her quick mind, her skill with numbers, her gentle humor. June had stopped hoping for such things 2 years ago, after Robert Cunningham had courted her for 3 weeks before his mother put a stop to it, declaring that she would not have a fat woman in her family. The memory still burned. Miss Jensen. June turned to find Mrs. Patterson, the minister's wife, bearing down on her with a plate of cookies and a sympathetic expression that was somehow worse than outright cruelty. "You really should not be standing here all alone, dear. Come help me serve refreshments. At least then, you will have something to occupy yourself with." Before June could respond, the door to the community hall swung open, bringing with it a gust of cooling evening air and a man June had never seen before. He was tall, well over 6 feet, with shoulders broad enough to fill the doorway. His clothes marked him as a working cowboy. Worn denim trousers, a simple cotton shirt that had seen better days, scuffed boots, and a hat that he removed as he stepped inside, revealing dark brown hair that needed cutting. His face was weathered from sun and wind, with strong features and eyes that were a startling shade of green. June guessed him to be in his mid-20s, perhaps 26 or 27. The music faltered for a moment as heads turned to assess the newcomer. Springerville was not so small that everyone knew everyone else, particularly with ranch hands coming and going with the seasons, but there was something about this man that commanded attention. He moved with a quiet confidence, his gaze sweeping the room with careful assessment. His eyes found June, and for a moment she thought she saw something flicker across his face. Recognition, perhaps, though that made no sense. They had never met. Then his attention moved on, and June felt the familiar wash of relief and disappointment that came with being overlooked. "That must be one of the new hands at the Double Diamond," Mrs. Patterson whispered, her earlier sympathy replaced by curiosity. "Walter Hodge mentioned he was hiring for the fall roundup. My goodness, he is a large fellow. The man made his way to where Walter Hodge stood talking with several other ranchers. June watched as they shook hands, as Walter clapped him on the shoulder and made introductions. She could not hear the conversation over the resumed fiddle music, but she saw the way the rancher's daughter, Sarah Hodge, immediately positioned herself in the newcomer's line of sight, her copper curls and tiny waist displayed to full advantage. June turned away. She had seen this dance before, though never with her as a participant. A handsome stranger arrives in town, the eligible young women compete for his attention, and within weeks he is spoken for by whichever girl has the prettiest face or the wealthiest father. June Jensen, with her accounting skills and her father's money, never factored into such equations. Her weight disqualified her before she could even enter the race. "I believe I will head home," June said quietly to Mrs. Patterson. "Please give my regards to Reverend Patterson." "Oh, but dear, the evening has barely begun. I have a headache." It was not entirely a lie. The noise and heat of the crowded hall pressed against her temples like a vise. She made her way toward the door, skirting the edge of the room, trying to remain invisible. She had almost reached the exit when a hand caught her arm. "Excuse me, miss." June turned, startled, and found herself looking up into the green eyes of the stranger. Up close, he was even taller than she had realized, and she caught the scent of horse and leather and something clean, like sage. "Yes," her voice came out smaller than she intended. "I was hoping you might do me the honor of a dance." For a moment, June was certain she had misheard him. Behind the man, she could see Sarah Hodge frozen in mid-sentence, her pretty mouth open in surprise. Around them, conversation stuttered to a halt. "I beg your pardon, a dance," the man repeated, and now June could see that his eyes were kind, with small lines at the corners that suggested he smiled often. "Unless you are already spoken for this evening," heat flooded June's face. This had to be some kind of joke, a cruel trick designed to humiliate her in front of the entire town. She glanced around, looking for the men who must be watching and snickering, waiting for her to accept so they could laugh at the spectacle of her trying to dance. "I do not think that is a good idea," she managed. "Why not?" The question was so straightforward, so devoid of mockery that it caught her off guard. June searched his face for signs of cruelty and found none. "I do not dance," she said finally. "Cannot or will not. Both. Neither. I just do not." The man studied her for a moment, his head tilted slightly to one side. Then he smiled, and it transformed his entire face, softening the hard lines and making him look younger. "Well, that is convenient because I am terrible at dancing. I was really hoping to stand on the edge of the floor and talk instead. Would that be acceptable?" June stared at him. Around them, the whispers had started, curious and confused. She could feel dozens of eyes on her back, could imagine the speculation already forming. Fat June Jensen actually being asked to dance. What could this stranger possibly want with her? "Why?" she whispered. "Why what? Why are you asking me?" The man's smile faded slightly, replaced by something more serious. "Because you look like the only person in this room who is as uncomfortable as I am. And because you have kind eyes. And because I am new in town and do not know a soul, and you seem like someone worth knowing." It was the most unexpected answer June could have imagined. She opened her mouth, then closed it again, entirely at a loss for words. "My name is Harrison Owens," the man continued. "I just signed on at the Double Diamond for the fall season. I am from Nevada originally, and I am 26 years old, in case you were wondering. I do not drink to excess. I attend church when I can, and I have never been married. I believe those are the questions most people ask when they are getting to know someone." Despite herself, June felt a small smile tugging at her lips. You are very direct. Life is too short to be otherwise. Harrison Owens extended his hand. So what do you say? Will you stand awkwardly on the edge of the dance floor with me and pretend we know what we are doing? June knew she should refuse. This was clearly some sort of mistake or misunderstanding, and it would be better to extricate herself now, before whatever was happening could become more complicated. But there was something about the way he looked at her, as if she were a normal woman being asked a normal question, that made her want to say yes. June Jensen, she said quietly, placing her hand in his. And I suppose that would be acceptable. His hand was warm and calloused, the hand of a man who worked with ropes and reins. He led her not to the edge of the floor as promised, but directly onto it, finding a space among the other couples. The fiddle was playing a waltz, and before June could protest, Harrison had placed one hand at her waist and raised the other to hold hers. I thought you said you were terrible at dancing, June said, her heart hammering so hard she was certain he must feel it. I am. But I figured we could be terrible together. He was not terrible, actually. He was not graceful exactly, but he moved with the same quiet confidence he had shown entering the hall, guiding her through the steps with steady pressure. June, who had not danced since she was 15 years old, stumbled and stepped on his feet, but Harrison just grinned and kept moving. You are doing fine, he murmured. I am stepping on you. I have thick boots. I barely feel it. June laughed, a surprise sound that bubbled up before she could stop it. When was the last time she had laughed at a dance? When was the last time she had laughed anywhere in public, instead of keeping herself carefully contained and controlled? Around them, she could feel the stares, could sense the confusion and curiosity. Sarah Hodge looked positively furious, and several of the older women were whispering behind their hands. But for the first time in years, June found that she did not care. The music swirled around them, and Harrison Owens held her as if she were made of something precious. And for 3 minutes and 45 seconds, June Jensen felt beautiful. When the song ended, Harrison did not immediately release her. He stood there, still holding her hand, looking down at her with those remarkable green eyes. Thank you, he said quietly. That was the best dance I have had in a very long time. You are welcome, June whispered, not trusting her voice to be any louder. Might I see you home when the evening ends? I would like to continue our conversation, if you are willing. This was the moment where June should have said no. This was where she should have protected herself from whatever disappointment was surely coming. But she found herself nodding instead, found herself saying yes, found herself agreeing to something that felt dangerous and wonderful in equal measure. I would like that. Harrison smiled again, that transformative expression that made her chest tight. Then I will be honored to escort you, Miss Jensen. He released her hand and stepped back, and June felt the loss of his warmth like a physical thing. She made her way back to the wall, her legs shaking, her mind spinning. What had just happened? Why had he asked her to dance? What could he possibly want? For the rest of the evening, June watched Harrison Owens move through the room. Several other young women tried to catch his attention, but he declined all offers to dance, instead spending his time talking with the ranchers and older men, asking questions about the land and the cattle and the work. He did not look at June again, but somehow she felt his awareness of her, as if there were an invisible thread connecting them across the crowded hall. When the party began to wind down around 11 o'clock, Harrison materialized at her side as if he had been keeping track of her location all evening. Ready to head out? He asked. June nodded, her mouth suddenly dry. She collected her shawl and said goodbye to her parents, who looked surprised and concerned in equal measure when she explained that Mr. Owens would be seeing her home. "I will have her back safely within the half-hour, sir," Harrison said to George Jensen, his tone respectful. "You have my word." George studied the younger man with the sharp assessment of someone who evaluated people for a living. "See that you do," he said finally. "And Harrison, my daughter is precious to me. I can see why, sir. She seems like a remarkable young woman." They stepped out into the cool night air, and June pulled her shawl tighter around her shoulders. Springerville sat at nearly 7,000 feet elevation in the White Mountains, and even August evenings could be chilly. Above them, stars scattered across the sky in thick clusters, so many that they seemed to blur together. They walked in silence for a moment, their footsteps echoing on the wooden sidewalk. Springerville was not large, perhaps 300 permanent residents, with more coming and going with the seasons. Most of the buildings were log or rough-cut lumber, built to be functional rather than beautiful. The bank where June's father worked stood at the corner of Main Street and Center, a more substantial structure than most, built of red brick hauled in from Santa Fe. "You are wondering why I asked you to dance," Harrison said finally. It was not a question, but June answered anyway. "Yes." "What if I told you I thought you were lovely?" June stopped walking. "I would say you were a liar." Harrison stopped too, turning to face her. In the dim light from the windows of the houses they passed, his expression was serious. "Why would I lie? Because men do not think I am lovely. Men think I am fat and undesirable and an embarrassment to my family." The words came out more bitter than June intended, but she was tired of pretending, tired of the careful dance of social niceties that required her to act as if she did not know exactly what people thought of her. Harrison was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "I think the men in this town must be blind. You do not have to say that. I am not saying it because I have to. I am saying it because it is true." He took a step closer, and June had to tilt her head back to look at him. "Do you want to know what I saw when I walked into that hall tonight?" June was not sure she did, but she found herself nodding anyway. "I saw a room full of people playing a game I have never been very good at. Pretending to be something they are not, trying to impress each other, hiding behind social graces and false smiles. And then I saw you, standing against the wall, and you looked like the only real person in the entire place. You were not trying to catch anyone's eye or angling for attention. You were just being yourself, and I thought that took more courage than anything else in that room." June's throat felt tight. "You do not know me." "No," Harrison agreed, "but I would like to if you will let me." "Why?" The question burst from her again, desperate and confused. "I do not understand. Why would you want to know me? You could have any girl in that hall. Sarah Hodge has been watching you all evening, and she is beautiful. Martha Whitley's father owns the largest ranch in the county. You could pursue them or any of the others, and they would be thrilled. So why ask me?" Harrison reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted, and took her hand. His fingers were warm against hers, and June felt that touch all the way through her body. "Can I tell you something?" he asked quietly. "Something I have never told anyone else." June nodded, not trusting her voice. "When I was 17 years old, I fell in love with a girl named Margaret. She was beautiful and smart and funny, and I thought I was the luckiest man alive. We courted for 6 months, and I was planning to ask her father for permission to marry her. Then one day, I overheard her talking to her friends. She was laughing about me, about how she was only seeing me because her father wanted her to marry a rancher's son, but how she could barely stand to let me kiss her. How she thought I was boring and simple, and how she was going to break things off as soon as someone better came along." He paused, and June could hear the old hurt in his voice. "I learned something that day," Harrison continued. "I learned that beauty is not the same as kindness, and that a pretty face can hide a cruel heart. I swore to myself that if I ever courted anyone again, it would be because I saw something genuine in them, something real and honest. Not because of how they looked or who their father was, but because of who they were. He squeezed her hand gently. When I looked at you tonight, I saw someone who has been hurt, someone who protects herself by staying in the shadows. But I also saw intelligence in your eyes and humor, and a kind of quiet strength that I respect. I do not know you yet, June Jensen, but I would very much like to. And if you give me the chance, I promise I will never lie to you about how I see you. June felt tears prickling at the corners of her eyes. She blinked them back, refusing to cry in front of this man she barely knew, this man who was saying things she had never dared to hope anyone would say to her. "I am scared," she whispered. "Of me, of this. Of hoping for something that might not be real." Harrison nodded slowly. "That is fair. Hope can be frightening when you have been disappointed before, so how about we take this slowly? I am working at the Double Diamond for at least the next 4 months. Let me call on you. Let me take you on walks and bring you flowers and make you laugh. If at any point you decide this is not what you want, you can tell me to leave and I will respect that. But give me a chance to show you that I mean what I say." June looked up at him, at this tall cowboy who had appeared out of nowhere and turned her entire evening upside down. Every instinct told her to protect herself, to say no, to retreat back into the safety of her carefully constructed walls. But something stronger than instinct was pushing her to take a risk, to reach for something that might be wonderful if she was brave enough to try. "All right," she said. "You can call on me. But I warn you, Mr. Owens, I am not easy to be around. I am prickly and defensive, and I will probably assume the worst of you at every turn." Harrison grinned. "Good, I like a challenge." They resumed walking, and when they reached the Jensen house, a comfortable 2-story structure near the edge of town, Harrison walked her all the way to the front door. "When can I see you again?" he asked. "I work at the bank every day except Sunday," June said. "I help my father with the accounts. Then I will come by Sunday afternoon if that suits you. We could take a walk, maybe follow the river a ways. I would like that." Harrison reached up and gently tucked a strand of hair that had escaped June's bun behind her ear. The gesture was so tender that June's breath caught in her throat. "Thank you for tonight," he said softly, "for taking a chance on a stranger. Thank you for asking me to dance." He smiled, tipped his hat, and turned to go. June watched him walk away, his tall figure disappearing into the darkness, and for the first time in years, she felt something unfamiliar blooming in her chest. It took her a moment to recognize it as hope. Inside, her parents were still awake, sitting in the parlor with cups of tea. Her mother looked up as June entered, her expression carefully neutral. "Did you have a nice evening, dear?" "I did," June said, and she could hear the surprise in her own voice. "I actually did." "That young man seemed very interested in you," her father observed, watching her over the rim of his cup. "I asked around about him. Walter Hodge says he is a hard worker, good with cattle and horses, keeps to himself mostly, but he is respectful and honest. Nevada family, apparently, though he has been working ranches across 3 territories for the past several years." "He asked to call on me Sunday," June said. Her mother's teacup rattled slightly as she set it down. "He did? Is that so surprising?" "No, of course not, dear. I just worry about you getting your hopes up. You do not know anything about this man." "I know he was kind to me," June said quietly. "That is more than most men have been." Her father and mother exchanged a glance, one of those wordless communications that came from 25 years of marriage. Finally, her father nodded. "Then I suppose we will have him over for Sunday dinner after church. I would like to get to know him better if he is going to be courting my daughter." June felt a flutter of nerves and excitement in her stomach. This was really happening. Harrison Owens was really going to call on her, really going to court her. It seemed impossible, like something from one of the romantic novels she read late at night when she could not sleep. Sunday afternoon arrived after 3 of the longest days of June's life. She helped her father at the bank, recording deposits and withdrawals, calculating interest and balancing accounts. But her mind kept wandering to green eyes and calloused hands, and a smile that had made her feel seen for the first time in years. She chose her dress carefully that morning before church, selecting a green cotton that her mother had made for her earlier in the summer. It was one of her better dresses, and the color brought out the hazel in her eyes. She even let her mother pin her hair in a softer style than usual, with small curls framing her face. At church, she felt the stares, heard the whispers. The story of Harrison Owens dancing with Jensen had spread through Springerville like wildfire, and everyone wanted to see what would happen next. Sarah Hodge and Martha Whitley sat together in their usual pew, their heads bent in constant conversation, their eyes flickering toward June with barely concealed curiosity. Harrison arrived at the Jensen house at 2 o'clock sharp, dressed in clean trousers and a dark blue shirt that June suspected was his best. He had shaved and trimmed his hair, and he carried a small bouquet of wildflowers that he presented to June's mother with a charming smile. "Mrs. Jensen, thank you for inviting me to Sunday dinner." Clara Jensen, who had been prepared to be skeptical, found herself warming to the young man despite her intentions. There was something genuine about him, an earnestness that was hard to resist. Dinner was a surprisingly pleasant affair. Harrison proved to be a skilled conversationalist, answering George Jensen's probing questions about his background and intentions with straightforward honesty. He had grown up on a small ranch outside Carson City, Nevada, the middle son of 5 children. His father had lost the ranch to debt when Harrison was 18, and he had been working his way across the West ever since, learning everything he could about cattle and horses and the land. "I am saving my wages," he explained. "Someday I want to have my own place again, a small operation where I can run my own herd. Nothing fancy, just something that is mine." "That is an admirable goal," George said. "It takes discipline to save when you are earning cowboy wages." "I do not need much," Harrison replied. "Just food, a place to sleep, and enough left over to put aside. The rest is just vanity." After dinner, Harrison and June took their promised walk along the Little Colorado River, which ran near the edge of town. The river was running low in the late summer heat, but the cottonwoods along its banks provided welcome shade. They walked slowly, neither in a hurry to end the afternoon. "Your parents are nice people," Harrison observed. "They care about you a great deal." "They worry about me," June corrected. "There is a difference." "Why do they worry?" June was silent for a moment, listening to the sound of water over rocks and the rustle of leaves in the breeze. "Because I am 20 years old and unmarried, and they fear I will end up alone. Because I am not what men want and they know it, and it breaks their hearts even though they try to hide it." "You keep saying that," Harrison said. "That you are not what men want. Who told you that?" "Everyone. My whole life, people have been telling me that I need to be smaller, quieter, less. That I take up too much space, that I am too much of everything. And they are right. I have seen the way men look at me, or rather, the way they look through me. I am invisible until I become an object of pity or mockery." Harrison stopped walking and turned to face her. "You are not invisible to me. You have only known me for 3 days. 3 days is long enough to know that every word you have just said is nonsense." His voice was firm, almost angry, and June took a step back in surprise. "I am sorry," he said quickly, moderating his tone. I do not mean to upset you, but it makes me furious that anyone has made you believe those things about yourself." "They are true," June insisted. "No, they are not. They are the words of small-minded people who only know how to value others based on appearances. You are not too much, June. If anything, you are probably not enough of yourself. You have been trying to shrink down and disappear for so long that you have forgotten how to take up space." June felt tears stinging her eyes again. "You do not understand. Then help me understand. Talk to me. Tell me what it has been like, living in a town that treats you like you are less than you are." And so June talked. Standing under the cottonwoods with the river flowing beside them, she told Harrison things she had never told anyone. About the boy in school who had offered her a piece of candy and then laughed when she reached for it, calling her greedy. About the dress shop owner who had sighed heavily when June's mother brought her in for fittings, as if making clothes for someone her size was an unbearable burden. About Robert Cunningham and his mother's cruelty. About 1,000 small cuts that had accumulated over the years until June had learned to expect nothing else. Harrison listened without interrupting, his expression growing darker as she spoke. When she finally fell silent, exhausted from the confession, he reached out and took both of her hands in his. "I am going to tell you something, and I need you to try to believe me," he said quietly. "You are beautiful, June Jensen. Not in spite of your size, not if I squint and ignore it, but just beautiful. Period. You have gorgeous eyes that light up when you smile. You have a lovely face, with these cute freckles across your nose that I have been wanting to touch since I first saw you. You have a quick mind and a sharp wit, and I like the way you challenge me when I say something you disagree with. You are passionate about things that matter to you, like those books you mentioned that you like to read. And yes, you have a larger body than some other women, but so what? That does not make you less beautiful, it just makes you different." "Harrison," June whispered, but he was not finished. "I know you do not believe me yet. I know that years of people telling you lies have made it hard for you to hear the truth. But I am a patient man, and I am willing to spend as long as it takes proving to you that I mean every word I am saying. You deserve to be loved, June. Not tolerated, not settled for, but truly, deeply loved. And I would very much like to be the man who loves you if you will let me." June could not stop the tears this time. They spilled down her cheeks, hot and fast, and she made no move to wipe them away. Harrison pulled her into his arms, holding her against his chest while she cried, one hand stroking her hair in gentle, soothing motions. "I am sorry," she managed between sobs. "I do not mean to cry all over you." "You cry as much as you need to," Harrison murmured. "I have got you." They stood like that for a long time until June's tears finally subsided and she pulled back, embarrassed by her outburst. Harrison produced a handkerchief from his pocket and gently wiped her face, his touch tender and careful. "Better?" he asked. June nodded, not trusting her voice. Harrison smiled and tucked the handkerchief back in his pocket. "Come on," he said, offering his arm. "Let us walk a bit more before I have to take you home. And you can tell me about these books you like to read. I want to know everything about you." Over the next several weeks, Harrison became a regular fixture in June's life. He came by the bank during his lunch breaks, bringing her wildflowers he had picked on his morning rides or interesting stones he had found. He showed up at church every Sunday without fail, sitting with the Jensen family and singing hymns in a pleasant baritone. He took June on long walks, showing her the country around Springerville, teaching her the names of plants and pointing out deer tracks in the soft earth. And he was patient. When June retreated behind her walls, defensive and prickly as she had warned him she would be, Harrison simply waited her out, never pushing, never demanding more than she was willing to give. He seemed to understand that trust was something she would have to offer freely, that it could not be forced or rushed. The town watched their courtship with fascination and confusion. Sarah Hodge declared it incomprehensible that any man would choose Fat June Jensen over the other available options. Martha Whitley speculated that Harrison must be after the Jensen family money, that there could be no other explanation. Mrs. Patterson tried to be supportive, but could not quite hide her bewilderment. Harrison ignored all of it. He was polite to everyone he encountered, but his attention remained focused on June with an intensity that both thrilled and terrified her. One evening in late September, as they sat on the porch of the Jensen house watching the sun set over the mountains, June finally asked the question that had been nagging at her since the night they met. "You really think I am beautiful? Or are you just being kind?" Harrison turned to look at her, and there was something serious in his expression. "Can I show you something?" "What?" He stood and pulled her gently to her feet, leading her to the window that looked into the parlor. The angle of the light turned the glass into a mirror, and June could see their reflections standing side by side. "What do you see when you look at us?" Harrison asked. June studied their reflection. She saw herself as she always did. Round face, thick arms, a body that strained against the fabric of her dress. And she saw Harrison, tall and lean and handsome, looking completely out of place beside her. "I see a mistake," she whispered. "I see two people who do not belong together." "Then you are not seeing what I see." Harrison moved to stand behind her, his hands resting lightly on her shoulders. "I see a strong woman who has survived years of cruelty and somehow managed to remain kind. I see someone who is smart enough to handle her father's banking work, which I would not even know where to begin with. I see a woman with beautiful hair that catches the light like honey, and a smile that makes my heart skip a beat every time I am lucky enough to witness it. I see someone I am falling in love with, and I see someone who makes me want to be a better man." June's breath caught. "You are falling in love with me. Is that so surprising?" "Yes." Harrison turned her gently to face him, his hands framing her face. "Then I will have to work harder to make you believe it. June Jensen, I am completely, utterly, hopelessly falling in love with you. I think about you every moment we are apart. I wake up excited for the day because I know I might get to see you. When you laugh at one of my terrible jokes, I feel like I could take on the world. And when you let your guard down and show me the real you, the woman behind all those walls, I fall a little bit harder." "Harrison," June breathed, and then his lips were on hers, gentle and questioning. June had been kissed before, awkward fumbling attempts from boys who did not really want her, and she had hated it. But this was different. Harrison kissed her like she was precious, like he had been waiting his whole life for this moment. And June felt something inside her crack open, something she had kept locked away for so long she had forgotten it existed. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Harrison rested his forehead against hers. "I am in love with you," he said again. "And I know you are not ready to say it back yet, and that is all right. I can wait. I will wait as long as you need." June's hands were shaking as she reached up to touch his face, feeling the slight stubble on his jaw, the warmth of his skin. "I am terrified," she admitted. "I know. But I promise you, June, I am not going anywhere, not unless you tell me to leave. I do not want you to leave." "Then I am staying." They sat back down on the porch swing, and Harrison pulled June against his side, his arm around her shoulders. She let herself lean into him, let herself enjoy the solid warmth of his presence, and for the first time in her life, June allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, she deserved this kind of happiness. October arrived, bringing cooler temperatures and the start of the fall roundup. Harrison's work at the Double Diamond intensified. with long days spent riding the range and gathering cattle. He could not visit as often, but he sent June letters, pages filled with observations about the land and the work, stories about the other cowboys he worked with, and declarations of his feelings that made June's heart race every time she read them. She kept the letters in a box under her bed and read them over and over late at night, tracing the words with her fingers as if she could absorb the emotions behind them through touch alone. She started writing back, tentative at first, but growing bolder as she realized that Harrison genuinely wanted to hear her thoughts. She told him about her work at the bank, about the books she was reading, about her dreams for the future that she had never shared with anyone. In her 6th letter, she wrote 3 words she had never written to any man before. I love you. Harrison rode into town the day he received that letter, dusty and exhausted from a long day's work, but grinning like a fool. He found June at the bank, counting out money for a deposit, and he swept her into his arms right there in front of her father and 2 startled customers. You love me, he said, his voice filled with wonder. June, mortified by the public display, tried to wiggle free. Harrison, put me down. We are in the bank. I do not care, you love me. Yes, you ridiculous man, I love you. Now please put me down before my father has a heart attack. Harrison laughed, a joyful sound that filled the small building, but he set her down gently. He turned to George Jensen, who was watching the scene with raised eyebrows. Sir, I would like to formally ask for permission to marry your daughter. The room went silent. The 2 customers, Mrs. Morrison and her husband, stared openly. George slowly set down the papers he had been holding. I think that is a conversation we should have in private, he said carefully. Of course, but I want June to be part of it. This concerns her most of all. That evening, the 3 of them sat in the Jensen parlor while Clara brought in coffee and then tactfully excused herself. George studied Harrison with the same careful assessment he had used the first time they met. You have known my daughter for 2 months, George said. That is not very long. No, sir, it is not. But I know my own heart, and I know that I want to spend the rest of my life with June. I love her, and I will do everything in my power to make her happy. What do you have to offer her? You are a cowboy earning $40 a month plus room and board. June is used to a certain standard of living. I have $600 saved, Harrison said. It is not a fortune, but it is a start. I am a hard worker and I am good at what I do. Walter Hodge has already said that if I want to stay on at the Double Diamond permanently, I would be welcome. The pay would increase to $50 a month, and he would throw in a small cabin on the property. It is not much, but it would be ours. And June is smart with numbers. Between her skills and my work, we could save enough to eventually buy our own place. George turned to his daughter. What do you want, June? This is your decision. June looked at Harrison, at this man who had walked into her life and changed everything. She thought about the future she had imagined for herself before he arrived. Years of helping her father at the bank, growing older in her parents' house, accepting that love and marriage were not meant for her. And then she thought about the future Harrison was offering, a small cabin, a life built together, someone who looked at her like she was the most precious thing in the world. I want to marry him, she said quietly, if he will have me. Harrison reached for her hand. June Jensen, I will have you every day for the rest of our lives, and I will still feel like the luckiest man alive. George was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. All right, you have my permission, but I want to be clear about something, Harrison. My daughter has been hurt before. She has been made to feel less than she is. If you ever make her feel that way, if you ever give her reason to doubt that you love her, you will answer to me. Am I understood? Yes, sir. And I give you my word that I will spend every day proving to June that she is loved and valued. Then I suppose we have a wedding to plan." They were married in November, in a small ceremony at the Springerville church. June wore a cream-colored dress that her mother had spent weeks sewing, with lace at the collar and cuffs. Harrison wore a new suit that had cost him a month's wages, and when June walked down the aisle on her father's arm, she saw tears in his eyes. The ceremony was simple but beautiful. Reverend Patterson spoke about love and commitment, about building a life together through good times and hard times. When Harrison slipped a simple gold band on June's finger, his hand was shaking. "I love you," he whispered, just loud enough for her to hear. "I love you too," June whispered back, and she meant it with every fiber of her being. The reception was held in the same community hall where they had first met, and this time when June entered the room, she did not press herself against the walls. She held Harrison's hand and smiled at the well-wishers, accepting congratulations and ignoring the few sour faces in the crowd. Sarah Hodge and Martha Whitley sat in the corner, their expressions suggesting they had each bitten into a lemon, but June found she did not care. Let them whisper and speculate. She had Harrison, and that was all that mattered. They spent their wedding night in a small room at the Springerville Hotel, since the cabin at the Double Diamond was not quite ready for occupancy. Harrison carried June over the threshold, both of them laughing, and set her down gently inside. "Hello, Mrs. Owens," he said, his voice soft and wondering. "Hello, Mr. Owens," June replied, suddenly shy. Harrison cupped her face in his hands, his touch gentle. "Are you nervous?" "A little. I have never done this before." "Neither have I, so we will figure it out together slowly. And if you need me to stop at any point, you just say the word. This is about both of us, June. I want you to feel safe and loved, not rushed or pressured." Tears pricked at June's eyes. "How are you so perfect?" "I am not perfect. I am just a man who loves his wife and wants her to be happy." He kissed her then, slowly and deeply, and June let herself get lost in the sensation. Harrison undressed her carefully, reverently, his hands gentle on her skin. When she started to cover herself, ashamed of her body even now, he caught her hands. "Do not hide from me," he said quietly. "You are beautiful, and I want to see all of you." Making love was awkward at first, fumbling and uncertain, but Harrison was patient and attentive, always checking to make sure June was comfortable. And when they finally came together, when June felt him moving inside her, she understood for the first time what all the fuss was about. This was intimacy, true intimacy. Two people joined together in body and spirit. This was what it meant to be loved completely, without reservation or judgment. Afterward, they lay tangled together in the narrow bed, Harrison's arms wrapped around June, her head resting on his chest. She could hear his heartbeat, steady and strong, and she felt a contentment she had never known before. "Thank you," Harrison murmured, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her back. "For what?" "For trusting me. For taking a chance on us. For becoming my wife. I know it was not easy for you, believing that I meant what I said, but I hope I have shown you that my love is real." June lifted her head to look at him. "You have. And I promise I will keep showing you every day that I love you too. You saved me, Harrison. You gave me back my life." "No," Harrison said, shaking his head. "You saved yourself, June. You were brave enough to take a risk, to let someone in. I just had the good fortune to be in the right place at the right time." They fell asleep like that, wrapped around each other, and when June woke in the morning to find Harrison watching her with a soft smile on his face, she knew that this was just the beginning of their story. The cabin at the Double Diamond was small, just 2 rooms and a loft, but it was theirs. June scrubbed every surface until it gleamed, hung curtains she had sewn herself in the windows, and arranged their meager possessions with care. Harrison built her a bookshelf for her growing collection of novels, and he carved their initials inside a heart on the door frame. Life as a ranch wife was harder than June had anticipated. She had grown up in town, in a house with wood floors and glass windows, and a stove that her mother could cook elaborate meals on. The cabin had a dirt floor, oilcloth windows, and a small fireplace that required constant attention. Water had to be hauled from the creek, laundry was an all-day affair, and cooking meals for two on their limited budget required creativity she had not known she possessed. But June discovered she was tougher than she had thought. She learned to bake bread in a Dutch oven, to preserve vegetables for the winter, to patch Harrison's clothes when they wore through. She learned to ride a horse, which Harrison insisted was essential if she was going to live on a ranch. She fell off more times than she could count, bruising her pride and her backside, but she got back on every time until she could stay in the saddle for an entire ride. Harrison came home every evening dusty and exhausted, but he always greeted June with a kiss and a smile. They ate dinner by lamplight, talking about their days, and then they would sit together on the small porch Harrison had built, watching the stars come out over the mountains. On cold nights, they stayed inside, and Harrison read aloud to June from her favorite books while she mended or knitted. Winter arrived early that year, bringing snow that turned the high country into a frozen landscape. The work at the Double Diamond slowed, and Harrison spent more time at home, which June loved. They played cards and told stories, and made love in the warmth of their bed, while the wind howled outside. On Christmas morning, June woke to find that Harrison had carved her a beautiful jewelry box from juniper wood, the lid inlaid with pieces of different colored stone he had collected during his rides. Inside was a letter, folded carefully. June opened it with trembling hands and read, "My dearest June, this is our first Christmas as husband and wife, but I pray it is the first of many. You have made me happier than I ever thought possible. Every day with you is a gift, and I thank God for bringing me to Springerville and for giving me the courage to ask you to dance. You are my heart, my home, my everything. I love you more than words can say. Yours forever, Harrison." June cried, of course, and then she gave Harrison his gift, a new pair of leather gloves she had been secretly working on for months, with his initials stitched carefully on the cuffs. He put them on immediately and declared them the finest gloves he had ever owned. Spring brought new life to the ranch and new hope to June. She had missed her monthly bleeding twice now, and while she had not said anything to Harrison yet, she suspected she might be carrying their child. The thought filled her with equal parts joy and terror. She wanted to give Harrison a baby, wanted to create a family with him, but she also worried about whether her body could handle the strain of pregnancy and childbirth. In late March, she finally worked up the courage to ride into town and visit Dr. Morrison. The doctor examined her and confirmed what she already suspected. "You are about 3 months along," he said. "Everything seems healthy, but I will want to see you regularly as you progress. Being your first child and given your build, we will want to monitor things carefully." June bristled at the implication. "What does my build have to do with anything?" Dr. Morrison had the grace to look embarrassed. "I simply meant that every woman is different, and we want to ensure both you and the baby remain healthy throughout the pregnancy. There was no judgment intended." June wanted to believe him, but years of similar comments had made her defensive. Still, she nodded and agreed to return for regular checkups. That evening, she told Harrison. She had planned to make it special, to find the perfect moment and the perfect words, but in the end, she just blurted it out while they were washing up after dinner. "I am pregnant." Harrison froze, the plate in his hand dripping soapy water onto the floor. "You are what? Pregnant? With child?" "We are going to have a baby in the fall. For a moment, Harrison just stared at her. Then he let out a whoop of joy that probably echoed across half the ranch and swept June into his arms, spinning her around the small cabin. "We are having a baby. June, we are having a baby." "Put me down," June laughed, dizzy from the spinning. "You are going to make me sick." Harrison set her down carefully, immediately contrite. "Are you all right? Should you be standing? Do you need to sit down? Should I get you water?" "I am fine," June assured him, charmed by his sudden concern. "I am pregnant, not dying. Women have been doing this since the beginning of time. But you are my wife and this is my baby, and I want to make sure you are both safe and healthy." He placed a hand gently on her still flat stomach. "There is a baby in there, our baby. June, this is the most incredible thing that has ever happened to me, other than the day you agreed to marry me. You are happy about this?" "Happy, I am ecstatic. Why would you think otherwise?" June looked down at her hands. "Because I am scared. Because I worry that something will go wrong. Because Dr. Morrison made a comment about my build, and even though he claimed he did not mean anything by it, I could hear the doubt in his voice." Harrison's expression darkened. "What did he say exactly?" "Just that we would need to monitor things carefully because of my size." "But Harrison, what if he is right? What if my body cannot do this? What if something happens to the baby because of me?" Harrison pulled her close, wrapping his arms around her. "Listen to me, June Owens. Your body is strong and capable, and it is going to do exactly what it needs to do to bring our baby safely into this world. Dr. Morrison is being cautious because that is his job, not because there is anything wrong with you. And I am going to be right here with you every step of the way, supporting you and loving you and reminding you how amazing you are." June buried her face in his chest, letting his certainty wash over her. Harrison had never given her reason to doubt his word, and she chose to believe him now. The pregnancy progressed without complication. June's body changed, her belly swelling to accommodate the growing baby, and while she sometimes felt self-conscious about the additional weight, Harrison never let her dwell on those feelings for long. He told her constantly how beautiful she looked, how radiant pregnancy made her. He placed his hands on her belly to feel the baby kick and talked to the child in low, soft tones, telling stories and making promises about the life they would build together. June's mother came to visit often, bringing supplies and advice. Clara Jensen had been surprised by the news of her daughter's marriage, but she had come to genuinely appreciate Harrison and the way he treated June. She helped June prepare for the baby's arrival, sewing tiny clothes and blankets, teaching her daughter the things she would need to know about caring for an infant. In October, 3 weeks before the baby was due, June woke in the middle of the night to a sharp pain low in her belly. She tried to ignore it, thinking it was just the baby moving, but the pain came again, stronger this time, and she realized with a start that her time had come. "Harrison," she said, shaking his shoulder. "Harrison, wake up. It is time." Harrison came instantly awake, sitting bolt upright in bed. "Time, the baby is coming. Now. Yes, now, go get Dr. Morrison and my mother, hurry." Harrison scrambled out of bed, pulling on his clothes with shaking hands. "Are you going to be all right alone?" "I will be fine. Just go quickly." He kissed her forehead and then disappeared into the night. June could hear his horse thundering away, the sound fading into the distance. Another pain hit and she gasped, gripping the edge of the bed. She had known childbirth would hurt, but nothing had prepared her for the intensity of the contractions. By the time Harrison returned with Dr. Morrison, June's mother, and Mrs. Patterson, who had apparently insisted on coming along to help, June was pacing the cabin, trying to walk through the pain. "How far apart are the contractions?" Dr. Morrison asked, setting down his medical bag. "Maybe 5 minutes," June panted. "They are getting stronger. All right, Let us get you into bed and see how things are progressing." The next several hours blurred together in a haze of pain and exhaustion. The baby was stubborn, refusing to come quickly, and June labored through the night and into the next day. Harrison stayed by her side the entire time, holding her hand, wiping her face with a cool cloth, whispering encouragement when she was certain she could not go on. "You are doing so well," he murmured. "You are so strong, June, just a little longer." "I cannot do this," June sobbed at one point when the pain was so intense she thought she might break from it. "I cannot. It hurts too much." "Yes, you can. You are the strongest person I know, and I am right here. I am not going anywhere." Finally, as the sun was setting on what had been the longest day of June's life, Dr. Morrison announced that it was time to push. June bore down with everything she had left, and after what felt like an eternity, she heard the most beautiful sound in the world, her baby's first cry. "It is a boy," Dr. Morrison announced, holding up a tiny, red-faced infant. "You have a son." Harrison let out a choked sound that might have been a laugh or a sob, and June reached for her baby with shaking arms. The doctor placed the infant on her chest, and June looked down at the tiny face, the small hands waving in the air, and felt her heart expand in a way she had not known was possible. "Hello, little one," she whispered. "We have been waiting for you." Harrison bent over them both, his hand gentle on the baby's head. "He is perfect. June, he is absolutely perfect." "He needs a name," June said, exhausted but happier than she had ever been. "What about Henry?" Harrison suggested. "Henry Owens, it has a good sound to it." "Henry," June repeated, testing the name. "Yes, I like that. Henry it is." The baby, as if recognizing his name, let out another cry, and June laughed through her tears. Henry Owens had arrived, and their family was complete. The weeks following Henry's birth were challenging. June had never been so tired in her life, and there were moments when she wondered if she was cut out for motherhood. But Harrison was an involved father, getting up with her for nighttime feedings, changing diapers without complaint, and walking Henry around the cabin when he was fussy. They figured it out together, learning as they went, and slowly the chaos settled into something resembling a routine. June's mother visited often, helping with the baby and the household chores, and even Sarah Hodge grudgingly admitted that Henry was a beautiful baby. The town seemed to accept June and Harrison's marriage now, seeing the obvious love between them and the family they had created. Winter came again, and the cabin felt smaller with 3 people in it. Harrison started talking about building an addition, a proper bedroom, and maybe even a separate kitchen. They could not afford it yet, but he was saving every penny he could spare, working extra jobs when they were available. One evening in February, as they sat by the fire with Henry sleeping in a cradle Harrison had built, June looked at her husband and felt overwhelmed by gratitude. "I never thanked you," she said quietly. Harrison looked up from the rope he was mending. "For what?" "For saving me. For seeing me when everyone else looked away. For loving me when I thought I was unlovable." Harrison set down his work and moved to sit beside her. "You do not need to thank me for that. Loving you is the easiest thing I have ever done. You are my whole world, June, you and Henry. I would not change a single thing about our life together. Even the small cabin and the hard work and the limited money, even those things. We have each other and we have our son, and that is more wealth than most people ever know." June leaned her head on his shoulder, watching the fire crackle and dance. "I love you, Harrison Owens. I love you too, June Owens, forever and always." The years passed in a blur of hard work and simple joys. Henry grew from a baby into a toddler, then into a bright, energetic boy who loved following his father around the ranch. Harrison was promoted to foreman at the Double Diamond, which came with a significant raise in pay. They added 2 rooms to the cabin, making it a proper house, and June planted a garden that yielded vegetables all summer long. In 1885, June discovered she was pregnant again. This time, the news brought joy without the accompanying fear. She knew what to expect now, knew that her body was capable of bringing a child safely into the world. Their daughter, Josephine, was born in January of 1886, a healthy baby with her father's green eyes and her mother's dark hair. Harrison was utterly besotted with his daughter. He carried her everywhere, talking to her constantly, making her laugh with silly faces and songs. Henry, who was 3 years old by then, was initially jealous of the attention his sister received, but he soon became her fierce protector, always making sure she had her favorite blanket or alerting his parents when she was crying. Life was not always easy. There were hard winters when food was scarce, dry summers when the cattle struggled, and the constant worry about money that came with trying to build a life from nothing. But through it all, June and Harrison faced each challenge together, their love deepening with every year that passed. In 1888, Harrison finally saved enough money to buy a small parcel of land adjacent to the Double Diamond. It was only 40 acres, but it was theirs, purchased with their own money, deeded in both of their names. Harrison built a new house, larger and more comfortable than the cabin, with glass windows and wood floors and a real stove for June to cook on. They moved in the spring, and June stood in the middle of her new parlor and cried. This was the home she had never dared to dream of, the life she had thought was forever beyond her reach. And it was all real, solid, and tangible, proof that she was worthy of love and happiness, and a future bright with possibility. That evening, as they sat on the porch of their new house watching the sun set over the mountains, Harrison took June's hand. "You remember the night we met?" he asked. "Of course. You asked me to dance. You looked so surprised, like you could not believe anyone would want to dance with you." June squeezed his hand. "I could not. I had spent so long believing I was unwanted that I did not know how to accept being seen." And now, June thought about the question, about the journey she had taken from that insecure girl pressed against the wall to the woman she was now. She thought about the love Harrison had given her, patient and constant, and how it had slowly eroded the walls she had built around her heart. She thought about her children, sleeping peacefully inside, and the home they had created together. "Now I know that I was never unwanted," she said quietly. "I was just waiting for the right person to see me. You wanted me more than anything in the world, and you showed me that I was worth wanting. You gave me myself back, Harrison. You gave me permission to take up space, to be loud and messy and human. You loved me into believing that I deserved to be loved." Harrison raised her hand to his lips, kissing her knuckles gently. "You always deserved it, June. I just had the privilege of being the one to show you." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars come out one by one, and June felt a peace settle over her that she had never known before. This was home. This was family. This was love in its purest, most enduring form. The years continued to unfold, each one bringing its own joys and challenges. In 1890, June gave birth to twins, a boy they named Jacob and a girl they named Grace. The house suddenly felt very full, and there were days when June thought she might lose her mind from the chaos of managing 4 children under the age of 8. But Harrison was always there, helping with the endless tasks of parenthood, and together they created a home filled with love and laughter. Henry grew into a responsible older brother, helping with his younger siblings and starting to learn the ranch work from his father. Josephine was shy and gentle, preferring books to outdoor adventures, and June saw much of her younger self in her daughter. The twins were wild and rambunctious, always getting into mischief, but they brought such joy to the family that it was impossible to stay angry with them for long. June's parents visited often, and George Jensen watched his grandchildren with obvious pride. He had been skeptical of Harrison at first, concerned that the young cowboy might not be able to provide for his daughter, but he had been proven wrong in the best possible way. Harrison and June had built a good life through hard work and determination, and their love for each other had never wavered. In 1893, Walter Hodge offered to sell Harrison a portion of the Double Diamond. The older rancher was preparing to retire, and he wanted to see the land go to someone who would care for it properly. The price was fair, and with a loan from George Jensen, Harrison and June became the owners of 300 acres of prime grazing land. They renamed it the H&J Ranch, combining their initials, and Harrison hired 2 young cowboys to help with the increased workload. June took over the business side of the ranch, using the skills she had learned working at her father's bank to manage the accounts and plan for the future. She proved to have a talent for ranching business, negotiating fair prices for their cattle and finding ways to cut costs without sacrificing quality. Under her management, the ranch prospered, and within 5 years they had paid off the loan to her father and were making a solid profit. The town of Springerville had grown as well, with more families moving into the area and new businesses opening. June became involved in the community, helping to establish a small library and organizing social events. She was no longer the unwanted girl pressed against the wall at dances. She was Mrs. Owens, successful rancher's wife, mother of 4 and respected member of the community. But the best moments were still the quiet ones, when the children were in bed and Harrison and June could sit together on their porch, just the 2 of them, talking about their day or simply enjoying each other's presence. Harrison still brought her wildflowers, even after 15 years of marriage, and June still felt her heart skip when he kissed her. One evening in the summer of 1897, as they celebrated their 15th wedding anniversary, Harrison presented June with a gift, a beautiful gold locket on a delicate chain. "Open it," he said, his eyes twinkling. June opened the locket and found 2 tiny photographs inside. One was of their 4 children, posed together for a formal portrait. The other was of Harrison and June on their wedding day, young and hopeful, standing together in front of the church. "So you can always carry us with you," Harrison explained. "Everywhere you go, you will have your family close to your heart." June fastened the locket around her neck, feeling the weight of it settle against her chest. "It is perfect, thank you." "There is something else," Harrison said, pulling a folded paper from his pocket. "I had the deed to the ranch updated. It now officially reads Harrison and June Owens, equal partners in marriage and business. You are not just my wife, June. You are my partner in every sense of the word, and I wanted the paperwork to reflect that." June looked at the deed, at their names printed side by side, and felt tears well in her eyes. In a time when most women had no legal rights to property, when wives were expected to be subordinate to their husbands, Harrison had made sure she was an equal owner of everything they had built together. "You continue to amaze me," she whispered. "I just want to make sure you know how much I value you, not just as my wife or the mother of my children, but as June, as the brilliant, capable, beautiful woman you are." They made love that night with the tenderness of long familiarity, knowing each other's bodies as well as they knew their own. Afterward, lying in the darkness with Harrison's arms around her, June reflected on the incredible journey that had brought her to this moment. She thought about the scared, insecure girl she had been, convinced she was unworthy of love. She thought about the night Harrison had asked her to dance, and how close she had come to refusing him. She thought about all the ways he had proven his love over the years, patient and constant, never wavering even when she had pushed him away or doubted his sincerity. And she thought about the woman she had become, strong, confident, loved. A wife, a mother, a businesswoman, a friend. Someone who took up space without apology, who loved fiercely and lived fully. "What are you thinking about?" Harrison murmured, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her arm. "Just how lucky I am. How different my life might have been if you had not walked into that community hall 15 years ago. I am the lucky one. You took a chance on a broke cowboy with nothing but dreams and determination. You believed in me, in us, and you helped build something incredible. Everything I am, everything we have, it is because we did it together." June turned in his arms to face him. "I love you, Harrison Owens, more today than the day we married, and I will love you more tomorrow than I do today." "That is good," Harrison said, kissing her forehead, "because I plan on spending the rest of my life with you, and I would hate to do it alone." They fell asleep like that, wrapped around each other, and when morning came, they woke to the sounds of their children arguing over breakfast and life continuing in all its beautiful, chaotic glory. The years rolled on, bringing new joys and new challenges. Henry grew into a fine young man, taking on more responsibility at the ranch, and eventually marrying a sweet girl from a neighboring property. Josephine surprised everyone by announcing she wanted to attend the new teachers' college in Flagstaff, and June and Harrison supported her dream, proud of their daughter's intelligence and ambition. The twins, Jacob and Grace, were inseparable, both of them showing an aptitude for working with horses that Harrison encouraged. In 1905, June became a grandmother when Henry and his wife welcomed a daughter. June held the tiny baby and marveled at how quickly time had passed, how the years had flown by in a blur of love and laughter and hard work. She was 53 years old now, her hair threaded with silver, her body carrying the marks of age and childbearing. But when Harrison looked at her, she still saw the same love in his eyes that had been there the night he first asked her to dance. He was 51, still strong and capable, though his back bothered him on cold mornings, and his dark hair had gone completely gray. They had built a good life together, better than June had ever dared to dream. The ranch was prosperous, their children were happy and healthy, and they were respected members of their community. But more than any of that, they had each other. Through everything, they had held on to the love that had brought them together, nurturing it and protecting it and allowing it to grow deeper with each passing year. One evening in the fall of 1905, as they sat on their porch watching the sunset, Harrison took June's hand. "You have any regrets?" he asked. June considered the question. She thought about the hard times, the struggles, the moments of doubt and fear. She thought about the years she had spent feeling unwanted and unworthy, and how close she had come to never experiencing love at all. "No," she said finally. "No regrets. Every single thing that happened, good and bad, led me to you. Led me to this life. How could I regret any of it? Even the hard parts. The people who were cruel to you, even those. They taught me how to recognize genuine kindness when I found it. They made me appreciate what we have even more." Harrison was quiet for a moment. "I have been thinking about that night we met, about what would have happened if I had not asked you to dance. What brought this on? Henry's wife mentioned something the other day. She said she almost did not accept Henry's invitation to go riding because she was too shy, too afraid he would reject her. It made me think about how close we came to never happening. If I had not walked into that dance, or if you had refused me, or if either of us had been too scared to take a chance." June squeezed his hand. "But we did take that chance. You were brave enough to ask, and I was brave enough to say yes, And look at what we built from that one moment of courage. It is a good life, is it not? It is the best life, June confirmed. The absolute best. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sky turn from gold to pink to purple as the sun sank below the mountains. June thought about all the sunsets they had watched together over the years, all the quiet moments stolen between the demands of work and family. These were the moments she treasured most, when it was just the two of them, together and content. You know what I think about sometimes? Harrison said quietly. What? I think about all the other men at that dance, the ones who looked at you and saw only what society told them to see. And I think about how they missed out on knowing the most incredible woman I have ever met. How they could have had what we have, but they were too blind to recognize it. June laughed softly. I cannot imagine any of them would have built this life with me the way you did. Probably not, but their loss was my gain. I got everything I ever wanted because I was willing to look past the surface and see who you really are. I was not easy in the beginning. I fought you every step of the way. You were protecting yourself. I understood that, and I was willing to be patient because I knew you were worth the wait. June turned to look at him, at this man who had seen her when no one else would, who had loved her when she thought she was unlovable. His face was weathered and lined, his hands rough from years of hard work, but to her, he was still the most handsome man in the world. Thank you, she said softly. For what? For everything. For asking me to dance, for being patient with me, for building this life with me, for loving me exactly as I am, for being the best husband, the best father, the best partner I could have ever hoped for seeing me when I thought I was invisible, for wanting me when I thought I was unwanted. Harrison pulled her close, wrapping his arm around her shoulders. You never have to thank me for loving you, June. It has been the greatest privilege of my life. They sat there as the stars began to emerge one by one, filling the sky with their light. From inside the house, they could hear their grandchildren laughing, Henry and his wife chatting in the kitchen, the normal sounds of family life continuing around them. This is everything I ever wanted, June said, resting her head on Harrison's shoulder. Right here, right now with you, this is perfect. It is it not? Harrison agreed. It really is. And as the night deepened and the stars wheeled overhead, June Jensen Owen sat with her husband on the porch of the home they had built together, surrounded by the love they had created, and knew without a doubt that she was exactly where she was meant to be. The heavy girl who had once been unwanted had found a cowboy who wanted her more than anything in the world, and together they had built a love story that would echo through generations. Their children would tell their grandchildren about the night Harrison Owens walked into a community hall in Springerville, Arizona, and asked June Jensen to dance. They would talk about the ranch their grandparents built from nothing, about the love that sustained them through hard times, about the family that grew from two people brave enough to take a chance on each other. But for now, in this perfect moment, it was just the two of them. Harrison and June, Cowboy and the woman he loved, sitting together under the stars and knowing that every challenge, every struggle, every moment of doubt had been worth it for this. A life built on love, a family created from courage, and a happiness that would last for all the rest of their days. The story of the heavy girl who was unwanted and the cowboy who wanted her more than anything in the world was not just a beginning. It was a lifetime of love, unfolding one precious day at a time, proving that the deepest, truest kind of love was not about perfect bodies or perfect circumstances. It was about seeing someone for who they really are, accepting them completely, and choosing them every single day. Harrison and June had done exactly that, and in doing so, They had created something beautiful and lasting that would endure long after they were gone. As the years continued to pass, their love remained constant, a beacon of hope for anyone who had ever felt unwanted or unseen. Because June and Harrison proved that true love was not about fitting into society's narrow definitions of beauty or worth. It was about finding someone who saw your value when you could not see it yourself, who loved you not in spite of who you were but because of it, and who chose to build a life with you based on mutual respect, genuine affection, and unwavering commitment. And so they lived. Harrison and June Owens of the H&J Ranch in Springerville, Arizona. Their love story a testament to the power of seeing past the surface, to the courage required to take a chance on someone different, and to the incredible beauty that can bloom when two people commit to loving each other completely and without reservation for all the days of their lives.